how I'd explain that is like if you have a tree, let's say the tree of life, and we're all a part of that one tree, which some people say is also the shape of the universe. And I see myself as Rebecca, and I'm a channeler, and I'm here in my point of evolution. I would see myself as the tip of one of the branches. And I can go deep within myself in meditation, but I can only access streams of consciousness that are very close to me on that branch. And the more I go into my own awareness of source consciousness, and the more I practice that myself, the more I can get into the trunk of the tree. And then from there, I can go anywhere, which is amazing because it also means I can access anything.
Hey, Guy here, and my beautiful guest today is Rebecca Dawson, and this was a fabulous conversation. Rebecca obviously is a channeler, and though we don't get into her channeling so much today on the podcast because there's plenty of videos out there, I really want to explore her journey and also the lessons that she has gained from this wisdom over the years and how her relationship has changed not only to herself, but to others and to source consciousness itself. This is a really beautiful podcast. It's powerful, and I'd encourage you to listen to the entire thing because there's a lot of wisdom in this podcast. And I also think a lot of tools and insights that we can take, apply in our own lives moving forward. As you can see, I'm wearing my beanie here. It's winter here in northern New South Wales, Australia. Yes, it does get cold in tropical Australia. And as I record this, we're about to head to Bali for our sold out retreat very soon, next week, actually, which is exciting. We do have 2 more retreats coming up this year. We've opened registration for our Australia retreat near Byron Bay, which will be in September 2024. Registration tickets are selling. Jump on board if you want to join us in Australia for 5 days, and 1 more retreat in Croatia in October as well for 5 days, which is very exciting. All of them. Come and join us, meet us in person. You won't regret it. You'll have direct experiences of many of the things that we talk about here on the podcast. Anyway, links are below if you want to find out more. Enjoy this podcast with Rebecca today. It's beautiful. Let me know where you are in the world watching this as well. I love connecting. Much love. See you soon. Rebecca, welcome to the podcast, my lovely.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on.
If you were at a dinner party right now and sat next to a stranger and they asked you, what do you do for a living? What would you say?
Well, this is a good question. Depends who's at the dinner party. I think if I was amongst a very like-minded cohort and I was feeling super open-hearted, I would just say I'm a channeler.
All right. Okay, so you go there pretty often these days with people.
Yes, and I have a few different responses because not everybody really understands what a channeler is. So I have different ways of describing what I do.
Yeah, fair enough. How would briefly? How would you describe what you do with the channeling?
Well, I would say that people come to me to explore and get greater clarity on things that are really important to them. And for some people, it's what's happening in their lives. For some people, it's their inner workings or life journey. And for other people, it's the mechanics of reality and why is the world the way that it is and what's happening. So whatever is dearest to people and whatever they feel is the tweak that their consciousness or their mind requires in order to go into that next point of evolution for them, that's what I assist with.
With people, and then the channeling is a tool to support that. Is it like, how do you channel? Is it like there's different ways of channeling, I believe?
There are different ways of channeling. So I'm what you call a voice channel. So I actually will go into, and I'm a lucid voice channel, so I'm very present there. I'm not what you call a trance channel. But my voice changes and my face changes, and I have a team of masters that come through and speak through me. And they have a way of viewing and expressing certain perspectives of reality that's very clear and really assists in people completely shifting their view into what's happening in their lives, which for me, I have learned over the years is far more valuable than information that's like data. You could look at the same thing and view it from a completely different position, and it can totally shift your whole world.
Shift in perspective is a shift in life, isn't it?
That's it.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I know the feeling. I've had a few of those along my journey.
Right.
So I'm just asking a few selfish questions here because I'm really curious. And like when you channel, how does it feel like within your field? Do you feel like a presence coming in, like a warm? Because I hold meditative spaces for people, and quite often, once the group energy raises and that field starts to shift, then it's like a warm blanket that comes in and comes over me into that, which is quite, when it first happened, it was really unnerving. It was like, oh my God, what the, like, but as you work with it, it's quite profound to see. I'm still interested to see where it goes, but I'm just curious, how has it been like for you, and how is it now?
Well, that sounds like a beautiful experience. I love the way you describe that. So I've been doing this for a really long time, 30 years now. And as my own consciousness has expanded and evolved over time, the way in which I experienced it has also changed. So in the beginning, when it was something new, it really did feel like a little bit like what you're describing. I used to describe it as the Marshmallow Man effect because, Ghostbusters, big, big puffy feeling. And it felt like everything was very expanded, and my head would feel enormous, and the energy would it felt like something huge was trying to fit into my tiny little body or space. So it felt like being squeezed from the inside, actually, a little bit. And over the years, as I've adjusted and become more comfortable, and it's taken a lot of practice and a lot of meditative expression over the years. Now it's very, very simple. Now it's actually just like changing gears. When you drive a car, you just shift from one gear to the next, and I can move in and out quite quickly. And so I still feel the change in the energy, but it's not as intense a change. It's a slight change. And it feels now, rather than something very intense, it just feels like a relaxation now. So these days I tend to lean back, and I teach other people to do this as well who are beginning to move into their own experience of channeling. It's a leaning back into it.
Yeah.
And in that way, it's a very relaxing experience, and you get to view from a certain space, which is quite magnificent for a channeler.
Yeah, I bet. So it's like a softening into it as opposed to
relaxing into it. Yes.
Yeah. So who do you channel? Like, who comes through typically?
Well, this has also changed over many years because of my perspectives and views. What I'm channeling hasn't changed. My view of it has changed. So, earlier on, I had an understanding that, well, we're here and there are beings and consciousness that know far much more than us, and they're up here. And so that's what my experience was that it was, ascended masters. So I had Serapis Bey, who was with me first for about 12 years, and then Saint Germain, and then Kuthumi that came in. And as I moved into my experiences of unity consciousness and being a part of one unified field, which was some really profound experiences for me in my 20s, my experience of them was less individualized, personified. Well, this is this master, this is this master, this is this master. And it became a group energy, like a braiding of consciousness. And then sometimes now it's just, it feels like it's aspects of source consciousness coming through. But there are certainly times when we're doing, large audiences or particular topics where more of a stream of personality of one of the masters will come through. But they tend to come through now more as a group consciousness, if that makes sense. So the more I expanded my ability to understand unity consciousness, the more they began to present themselves in that way.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I kind of ponder on these things, like if source is source, which is given rise to all creation, then there has to be a point of individualization that separates from source. So I guess what you're saying is that you're kind of going closer to the source where everything's becoming unified.
Right.
Yeah.
Which actually makes me a better channeler. And it means I can access far more than I could access before. And how I would explain that is like if you have a tree, let's say the tree of life, and we're all a part of that one tree, which some people say is also the shape of the universe. And I see myself as Rebecca, and I'm a channeler, and I'm here in my point of evolution. I would see myself as the tip of one of the branches. And I can go deep within myself in meditation, but I can only access streams of consciousness that are very close to me on that branch. And the more I go into my own awareness of source consciousness, and the more I practice that myself, the more I can get into the trunk of the tree. And then from there, I can go anywhere, which is amazing because it also means I can access anything. So over the years for me, it's been fascinating watching the evolution of what kind of information can come through, what kind of streams of information can come through, the more I deepen in my own awareness of one consciousness.
Wow. I love that analogy. Yeah, that's like, it's just like another shift in perspective for me. There you go.
Right.
Exactly right there.
And for me as a channeler, it makes it more interesting because it means that I don't just stick to one truth or one belief, or these are my teachers and this is my shtick and this is my thing and I'm sticking to it. It's a continual discovery, which for me personally is satisfying. Yeah. Yes, it should be. Yeah.
Totally. Like they always say, you got to become your own guru. Like it's the inward journey where all the wisdom lies.
It totally is. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Cause I find cause I've just had a second baby. So I've got my son that's 5 months old. My daughter's nearly 4. So it's just chaos when I'm at home, absolute chaos. So I've completely surrendered to my life as it is right now. Cause before kids, I could get up and do meditation without my daughter walking in and really explore. So it's almost like when I go and do the events and retreats, I'm just surrendering to what's coming through and using that as my own evolution and just seeing where it takes me. I'm not getting too attached to the meaning of things and must progress with it and things like that and just allow it to evolve, which feels good actually.
Yeah. And, similarly to you, having been through the kid journey, just coming out the other side now, looking a little bit more sane recently. I was very fortunate because for me, the actual practice of doing the channelings and doing groups of that and having individual sessions, when I was so wiped out with everything else, that was my practice because in hearing the wisdom for other people, I was also taking it on for myself.
Exactly. So I got to ask you, how did all this come about in the first place? Because you even mentioned you experienced in your 20s the unified consciousness, that source energy as well, which I'd love to hear what that experience was like as well, if that's okay. Was that what awoke when you had those experiences, or did that come later after all this?
The channeling came first. And then the experience of unity consciousness came later.
Okay. So
the channeling started when I was first year university, and it was pretty inconvenient because it wasn't something that I really planned, and it was like a full-blown experience the first time. So while, that was kind of cool, but how that disrupted my reality was pretty profound.
How did it come about? Were you just like in the shower or something and you just started channeling, or was you like, how did that happen?
No, that probably would have been better. No, because at least you're by yourself and you don't have to tell anyone about it. No, I was wandering down an arcade in the middle of Perth City, and I had found this cute little new age store, and I saw some ancient Egyptian tarot cards in there, and I was attracted to them because I'd always been interested in Egypt. I had a lot of memories when I was a child about having been in Egypt, eons ago. And I had found these cards with all of these symbols on them, and I didn't know anything about tarot, and I wasn't really interested in learning about tarot. I just really liked these cards. So I took them home with me, and I started learning about the different symbols in them and playing with them. And I thought, well, I'll give this a go and just see if I can do some readings for family and friends. And as it turned out, I was pretty good at it. I wasn't channeling. I was just interpreting what I thought the symbols meant. So obviously there was some inherent, memory there somewhere about those things. And then one day, someone came along and they'd been through a terrible breakup, and they were sitting in front of me, and I felt this huge energy coming from the back of my head, and it was almost like I couldn't contain it. This was the Marshmallow Man. And I was sitting on the floor in my parents' lounge room, cross-legged. And all of a sudden my voice changed. And it felt like something else took over, and there was a whole conversation around why this was happening for this person, what it was all about, what had happened in a previous life for them. And it felt like it was about 5 or 10 minutes. And when I came out of it, it had been an hour, and this person was just sitting there in front of me and had been furiously scribbling down notes. And that was the beginning. So that was the easy part. Guy, what was difficult was trying to figure out what that meant for my life in the years afterwards.
I was going to say, what did you do with that once that happened? Like, because there's no one you could turn to talk to initially that got it, was there? Like, understood, or you?
Well, I was quite lucky because I had done meditation classes for quite a few years. My mum was involved in a spiritual group. So I was lucky. I did have some understanding, okay, this must be what channeling is. And, I was pretty developed already with a lot of my psychic abilities. Like I was a bit telepathic and I could see colors and stuff like that. Not that you could talk about those sorts of things really, but, my family was great. They were really understanding. What I lacked, particularly because bearing in mind this is, Perth, in 1994 or 5 or something like that, is that I couldn't really find anyone else around to assist me with that or mentor me. There were a couple of people in Perth who were doing that, something similar, but the issue was my age and my level of experience. So because I was so young, the general consensus was, you really shouldn't be doing this. You don't know what you're doing. It could be dangerous. So, it was a lot of soul searching over those early years. And, I wasn't really the same after that event happened because it blew all my senses open. I found it very difficult to keep studying. My brain didn't work the same anymore. I could suddenly hear everybody's thoughts and see people's energy. And it was just, It was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot.
It was like information overload and just trying to navigate life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember going back to uni I think it happened on a Sunday, and the Monday I had to be in a lecture theatre first thing. And I was sitting there and I was at the back because I always sat at the back because I like to watch people. That was more interesting sometimes than the lectures. And what I discovered was that suddenly I could see thought forms everywhere, and suddenly I could hear everybody. And it was a lot. It was overwhelming.
Wow. Well, what does a thought form look like? Is it like a haze or a cloud, or or you're just hearing it?
Well, there's a couple of different types of thought forms that I see, and then you can sense them differently. So first you get the ones that look like kind of blobs in different shapes and colors, and sometimes they form around people, sometimes they move between people, and then there's more like the geometric imprints. So they look like geometric overlays, if you will, that are certain designs, and there's lots of information in them if you know how to sense them and read them. But I don't really do a lot of that anymore. I explored that in the beginning, but how much information do you really need when,
totally.
It can, as you say, overload. And I really just decided to go within and focus on the internal space. was a little bit too much out there.
Yeah. Wow. So what happened then? So you're in your 20s now, I'm guessing, and going within, what did that look like? Was that then just having a meditative practice, or just kind of being a recluse from people, or like
a little bit of that also. I mean, the first couple of years after this happened, I mean, I decided to take a break from university after another 6 months because it was too much. And then I decided to go over to the UK and Europe. You know, a lot of people do that when they are younger. And I thought I might find people or groups or a mentor or a teacher or something over there. And that didn't really work out for me. And I was a bit, if you can imagine the sensory overload in Perth, Western Australia, you can imagine the sensory overload in the UK.
Especially, so did you go to London? Fulham, I think a lot of Australians go to, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really tough. And when I came back from that, life unfolded in a particular way where I had an opportunity to go and be in Bali for a couple of years. So I'd met someone and they were moving to Bali. So I went with them, and I just decided that I wanted to spend that time going within, and I wanted to know, I didn't want to know, I wanted to experience. My terminology at that time was God. What is God? And I don't want to just know it. I want to experience myself as that. Because I knew conceptually that we're all one, that we're all living gods, that we're all connected to the same energy. I wanted to have an experience of it. So I was very, very focused on experiencing that. And I used to spend up to, say, 8 hours a day just sitting, trying to move into that state. And I got close a few times and I could feel it. You know, I could feel that I was right on the cusp of something. And then, you know, I'd lose it, so to speak. And then one day I just got so frustrated, and I was sitting there. It was hot, you know, I was in the sun on a balcony, and I suddenly just went, you know, bleep this. There was a swear word. I give up. I've had enough. This is stupid. And in that moment where I verbally said it out loud, I give up. In that moment, it happened. And suddenly everything collapsed, and then everything exploded, and I was everything. And it lasted for 4 days.
4 days?
4 days. And for 4 days, I was the sea, I was the palm tree, I was the man on the motorbike that fell off and died right next to me on the road. I was the sky, and it was just exquisite. And I have never forgotten it. And I've had a couple of glimpses of it since. But once you experience that, once you know it, you can't unknow it.
You can't unknow it, yeah.
And it changed everything. Wow. It changed my idea of what channeling was, and it changed a lot. Changed a lot of things.
Absolutely. No, because I've had a similar experience myself. That's why I picked up on it earlier, but it wasn't for 4 days. I was vibrating a lot afterwards, but not for 4 days. So how did you function during those 4 days? Was you closing your eyes and you were just everything again? Were you going in and out, or did you stay at home?
I was in a tiny little village up in northeast Bali, which at that time there was hardly anybody there. It was like one street. It was a place called Chandidastra. I believe it's a lot more populated now. And there wasn't really too much to do there anyhow, other than, sleep, swim, walk, repeat. So, but it was just wondrous, like walking down the street and everything's an extension of yourself. It was like watching a moving painting. It was just magical. And the closest thing I can really describe to it, Guy, is, do you remember those old magic eye pictures back in the day? When you would look at a picture and you'd have to stare at it a certain way and suddenly everything popped out. It was like that. So it was like you could look at it, you could walk down the street, but it's a magic eye walk down the street. So you're just seeing consciousness coming out at you everywhere. Wow. It's like the one life in all things is greeting you in every form. It's just, even my hand was just like, it's amazing.
Wow.
I wish I had lasted longer.
I was going to say, were you concerned that it could stay permanently like that at the time? Or like, did any of those thoughts come through your mind, or were you just in bliss?
No, there's no thought, because there's no, in that state, there's no Rebecca.
Wow.
It's just isness. There's no thought for anything. There's just the pure wonderment of life on display. So it was just extraordinary. Cool. And I have to say, you know, I definitely have periods in my life since then where I have lost sight of that. But these days it lives in me stronger, really, than ever before. There's something about the vibrational frequency of the planet now that I feel supports that view far more easily than it used to.
Interesting. Because there's some conversations like it's almost like the veil is becoming thinner between physical form and beyond physical after we die, or the body dies anyway. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel that it's a part of our expansion into a new earth reality. I mean, we speak about this a lot in the seminars and things that we give, you know, moving into 5D. In fact, we were talking about this back in 2011, back before we really knew what 5D was. And when that information first started coming through, I was like, oh, really? But, you know, and all of that's been about increasing our awareness so we can see what's real. And moving out of this sense of a material world and into a sense of an energetic reality that can change form in any time, and nothing is fixed, right? Which is what the Buddha always used to talk about. Nothing is fixed in this reality except our perception. And our perception is what causes a particular view to become fixed. So as our vibration increases, our ability to view reality as more malleable or more plasmic continues to unfold.
Yeah.
And even our terms of ourselves. I mean, one of the most fundamental shifts in that regard is the experience that people have had with their own identities in recent years. Because people have been doing a lot of inner work, so to speak, or inner investigation, and who we thought we were is not who we were. I mean, that's the closest point to our internal self, our identity, of that reshaping and that malleability of our reality. And if we're going through that internally with our personalities and identities, for sure we can start to do that externally.
Yeah. Yeah. The collapsing of that structure that we've bought into our entire life, the belief systems, the fundamentals that are set up that actually aren't ours, but we haven't known a life outside of them. And when they start to break down, it's very easy to like dig your fingernails in and cling on for dear life as opposed to surrender to it.
Yes.
That's for sure. We see it all the time. Yeah. It's fascinating. So I want to get into that topic a bit deeper in a moment, but let's rewind it back because I'm loving your journey so far. It's quite wild. So once you had your 4 days of, experience with consciousness in that state in Bali. What did you do with that? Like, did you just go?
Well, I tried to go and join an ashram there because I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And they wouldn't have me actually. It was quite interesting because I went through an experience of, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And once you've had an experience like that, it's so exquisite. The next thought when you come back into your personality, like for me, when I landed again back in, 3D Rebecca world, oh my God, does anyone else know about this? People have to know about this. I've got to tell everybody. this is like that. This is possible, and this is how it is. And so there was such a sense of joy in wanting to share it. But of course, that's not so easy because people don't really know what you're talking about, and it wasn't so easy to find other people who were in the spiritual world who really, really got it. And that was an interesting discovery, because I had some conversations with some pretty prolific teachers and wise ones, and they hadn't had that experience. So, and it's not to say there aren't amazing teachers, because there are amazing teachers, but what I desired at that time was an experience with someone who had experienced that. Because otherwise it's a concept.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was an interesting adventure, Guy, after that, of not being able to find anyone. Found a couple of books, which I really enjoyed. Bhuji Krishnamurti, he's an interesting guy. And anything Neo-Advaita.
Oh, I'm not familiar with those.
It's radical non-dualism.
Huh.
Yeah. So that was interesting. But then trying to balance that also with, well, I have this capacity for channeling, and most people see that as something that's fairly dualistic, because there's Rebecca and then there's the masters.
Yeah. What year was this happening? The Bali incident and everything?
2001.
Yeah. Okay. Because when I started having my experiences, I could access podcasts more. I could access at least something that was like,
Right.
okay, now I know what I'm looking for.
Right.
And now I can sift through the noise to get to people that get it.
Yeah.
Because you have that reference point. And without that, it's just wild. It's like, how
yes.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to relate to where you would have been in the year 2000.
Well, we had dial-up internet, and I can tell you it wasn't very reliable up in Northeast Bali. So, but it was all perfect. It was all perfect, Guy, because at the end of the day, I've never had a teacher, and I really spent a lot of years looking for one. And of course, now I realize it's absolutely perfect, because if I had a teacher and they had their way of seeing and they had their practices and their views, it would have been so easy for me to adopt that. And a lot of the wisdom we've been bringing through over the last 15 or 20 years, especially at the time and even now, it tends to be quite radical. There are views on things that really push you to the edge of what you believe is true. And I think if I had really set, this is how it is, this is how life and the universe is set up, I don't know that I would have been so open to the wisdom that was coming through. So I have to always be in a standpoint where I don't know. And that's the 0 point. I don't know. And let's see what emerges from this space. And in that way, I can be completely impartial as a channeler and not influence what comes through.
Yeah, totally. So you come back from Bali at the end of all that. You get turned down from an ashram.
Yeah.
So did you come home, get a job, or did you think, right, I'm going to start channeling or? No,
I came home. I did some small group channelings and stuff before I ran away to Bali in those years between, say, 17 and 22 or 23. And then, I went very conventional. I still had my own inner meditative practices, and I was very interested in the oneness again. I didn't really do a lot of channeling at that point. I went and did all the conventional things, like got married and had a kid and had a regular job and all of that kind of thing, because, I wanted to have the human experience as well. And that was a deal I actually made with my team, because I had the option. I was given the option at 18. We can either start now, or you can go and have 10 years or so, do the human thing, understand what that's like, and then So that's what I did. I decided I wanted to have the real human experience, which, was the human experience. I won't say it was the easiest time. Glad I had it, because now I know what it is that people go through. And what it is to be human, and what the challenges are, and all of the emotion and difficulty that goes with that. And then, I hit 30 or so, 31, 32, and then we began again.
Wow.
Yeah.
and then when did you come out of the closet, per se, or if it wasn't, or was it just a natural progression into what you're doing now?
No, that really was a coming out of the closet, actually. And it was probably about mid to late 30s, I would say. So I was doing small group channelings and things in private for people up to then. And after that, things started to grow, and word of mouth. And I was working out of a natural medical clinic, and I was assisting a lot with the diagnoses there, and doing some other things there. And it just sort of got to the point where I started to realize, actually, people are okay with this. A bit of time's passed since 1994 or 5 or wherever it was, and people seem to be okay with this now. So it was just a natural demand that increased. And then by the time I got to late 30s, it started to increase overseas. And so I started to do stuff online, and now I'm in the US.
Wow. So with your channel and working with people, and I guess an overall message that's coming through, what seems to be the dominant message at the moment for you? Do you still work with people one-on-one, or is it more you're putting your content out there to that's actually thousands of people are watching that are taking on that information? There's a difference, and there's a difference in what that information would then be, I'm guessing. Yes.
Well, I'm still very, and I like that phrase you used at the beginning of our conversation, I'm still very rubber to the road. So I still do personal sessions, because I find, and look, a lot of channelers don't. There's very few channelers here in the US, I think, that are quite visible, that still do personal sessions, because they do take a lot of focus and presence and attention. So I still do those, and the reason I still do those is because I find the content so rich. Because when a human's going through a really difficult time or an experience, the wisdom that comes through can be quite profound. And I personally find that there are a lot of amazing nuggets in those sessions. I mean, I also have a membership community, so I do seminars every week, and I run courses and things like that. And that's great, because those sorts of conversations are around the mechanics of reality, and how does this work, and how does that work. Right now we're doing one on sound, and how you can generate certain codices of sound and vibration that then manifest reality. So there's things like that. I'm not really interested in, I'm interested in people discovering it because it can assist in their own developing of consciousness. I went through a period, hope you don't mind, I'm just musing at the moment. That's why I'm being,
please, that's great.
being a bit thoughtful, because I'm really thinking about it. I went through a period where I thought that it was really important to have a lot of visibility. So I thought, gosh, if I'm going to be here in the world and I'm going to be effective, we need to have this stuff go out to as many people as we can, because it's such gold. It doesn't make sense to me that there's not that many people listening to this wisdom. And then I realized that actually that's just putting such a condition on it. The main focus is actually how much more can I discover and explore for myself personally, and then that becomes an act of service to everyone else. People can then choose to access that if they want to. Yeah. And that's been far healthier for me, because it's so easy to go, well, we need to do this to for humanity, and it's part of our mission. And my personality tends to take on a lot of responsibility anyhow. So that's been a relaxing into, I'm doing this for my own interest, and maybe people will come along for the ride.
No, it makes sense. It's something I grapple with often with what we are doing as well, and having a podcast and having a family, and you know, it's just like life. Wow, it's just whizzing by. It's incredible.
Yes,
really.
Yes.
And when you have these, I guess, insights and certain experiences and understandings, it's only, I found it's just innate and natural to want to be able to pass it on to someone else if they want to listen, if they choose to listen.
That's right. That's right.
And because I don't know for you, but I kind of, my whole perspective has changed on how I view the world, how I view people, how I view things that are going on in the world. Like it is like when seeing it through a heart lens and tapping into beyond the fear that is portrayed in any incident, there's so much more there that can be supported out of whatever's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah. I think it's so easy when you think about yourself in the world and there's this whole world out there. It's so easy to think, well, there's so much to be done and there's so many people and there's so much change to be ignited, and it's a lot and it can feel overwhelming. And I think it's always a wonderful reminder to go back to what the masters speak about quite often, which is that you sit at the center of a spherical reality. You're the center point of that sphere. And so if you focus on what is important to you and what feels good to you, just like what you said about being heart-centered, your reality is then going to become an extension of that. And so when you do that, people start to show up in your reality differently. You start to experience the best of people. You start to discover a reality around you that's synergistic and coherent and pro-life. And it's your view that's changing, but ultimately your view changing is changing the world. Because as your view shifts, your view of reality shifts. And it may seem, well, suddenly all of these people that I know within my reality are transforming and they're happy and they're stepping out and they're doing new creative things and there's shifts that are happening all around me. That's happening because your consciousness has shifted into a different version of reality. And so if you really just focus on, and it's not selfish, it's smart. This is the mechanics of reality. If you focus on the evolution of your own view, the world evolves with you. And all the people that you know and love, and even the people you don't know, they all evolve with you because your perspective shifts as you shift. And that's how the world shifts. So masters always say, mind your own reality. That's the biggest contribution you could make to the shift in the Earth's consciousness, is to mind your own reality.
I love that. That's a t-shirt right there.
Mind your own
reality. Yeah. Well, it is. It's kind of, I keep thinking of like, I don't know. There was this game I used to play as a kid, and I was only pondering on this yesterday. I think it was called Gauntlet. I don't know and you'd become the wizard or you'd become this little person and you're on this little screen. And I kind of think of reality like that, where you're my ego is that little person. That's my physical experience. And me, the higher self, is the player.
Yeah.
And all I see is my own screen. And then the other people are all they're seeing is their own screens as they interact with each other, So what is true anyway? I mean, we're only seeing our version of truth.
I love that. And I love that idea of the game. There's a wonderful view that the master spoke about recently, that we're all in a huge room and we're all in our own flight simulators. And we're sitting there and we're flying these flight simulators, right? And we're zooming around all over the map, the blueprint for reality and what you can experience in this human reality. And everyone's been playing on the same map. And some of us are at different levels of the map and so on, depending on how far you get. We can't really see each other than inside the game when we're seeing each other's avatars next to us in the game. But what happens is that when one of us decides that they've had enough of playing that game and they want to see what else is possible, you go to the edge of the map of the game that's been presented to you, and you have the courage to fly out off the map into what you can't see, just from the pure curiosity. And then as you do that, it opens up a part of the game that wasn't there before. And you and what you do when you step out now creates a map or a part of the blueprint that all the other players in the collective consciousness can now discover and access. And that's, in essence, what creating the New Earth reality or the New Earth blueprint is. It's actually now creating more of the blueprint for collective experience. So if you're willing to get off the map and go out into, I don't know what I'm doing here, I don't know what there is, I don't know why I'm going this way, it extends the game of play, extends the map for new things. Because, the concept of karma, we've all played this game so many times. All the levels have been played.
I know. I've had many a conversation on the podcast around so many of these topics. It spins my head still to this day. So just kind of coming into the last end of the podcast, though, I'm curious to ask you, like, what do you feel, or what has been the messaging that's coming through in what is happening on the planet right now? What are we moving into? Which way is the world going? Is it really depending upon how we mind our reality at the end of the day?
Yes. I mean, what I just alluded to there really was that, of course, we can go back and try and correct reality and try and fix what's already happened. But all we're doing is we're trying to tweak the maps in the game that have already been played. Whereas the opportunity now, vibrationally, and this is the paradigm shift into a new Earth reality, is that there are those of us who have the opportunity to be pioneers and to go into the unknown. And there isn't a set path for us. This is pure curiosity, and the hallmark of source consciousness is curiosity. It wants to explore new things. So our great opportunity is to be comfortable with not knowing. And if we can't see in front of us, it's because that part of the map of experience hasn't been created for humanity yet. And if you're in a position where you can't see in front of you, you are on the threshold of being a pioneer to create something new. So it was what I would call points of consciousness, or certain humans that are on the planet at this time, to actually create the new maps of experience for collective consciousness moving forward. We all know the experiences we've had in humanity. What are the new experiences that we can have? Because when you do it, you actually create that possibility for everybody else to be able to do it as well. We are a collective consciousness here. So the main message that I would say that this time is for is to be bold, to make spontaneous choices. Be spontaneous, be curious, step out into the unknown, because that's where all the space is for new things to be able to happen. And so many people are disillusioned, and they don't like what they do, and they don't like who they are. All of that's designed to position you to step into the, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I want, but I know that I don't want to do this anymore. And that's really all you have to do. And then after that, follow what feels the most expansive to you. And that's going to lead you into a whole new set of possibilities.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is the design phase of the New Earth reality.
Yeah. And I think that the one thing that I witness a lot, though, like as I say, because we're in front of so many people all the time, is that people, not everyone, but seem to be waiting till they're in so much pain. Like it's so much harder because they've left it for so long before they decide to make these bold decisions or move forward. Like there's so much trauma that's held in their body. There's so much weight, and it pains me to see it when I think, oh, if only we would just allow ourselves to be explorative and curious, as opposed to just
and yet
yeah.
You know, we live in a dualistic reality. We know that the shift is inevitable. We know that evolution is inevitable. We know that we're going to move towards unification again, because that's inevitable. That's the way source consciousness works. So if we're in a dualistic reality, there's two pathways to that point of agreement again, that point of convergence. And one is through going within, peace, love, compassion. That's what takes you in, and that's the doorway to that. The other, just as effective, just as valid, just as powerful, just as sacred pathway is through pain and trauma, because it brings you to that point where there's nowhere else to go but within, and it leads you to that point in evolution. So it's wonderful that you're seeing so many people in that state, because it means that they're on the cusp of that leap in evolution. So it doesn't matter which doorway you go through. I mean, that's a choice that's made not in the mind, but it's inherent. I'm going to go this way in this life through that doorway or through this doorway. They're both going to do the same thing.
For sure. For sure. I mean, I had a t-shirt made when I sold my company because I was so terrified of stepping into the unknown and doing this. Just no pressure, no diamond.
Oh, I love that.
And I and I think, okay, like I'm being rebirthed here through through the sheer pressure of it all, and I do see that and witness that with people for sure. You know, yeah. Do you feel all this? There's clearly an acceleration that's happening. Like,
yes.
You know, even when I reflect back, it's interesting that I really started to I guess, come online, for a better word, after 2012, even though we were speaking about it. It's like, wow, yeah, everything started happening in my life from that point onward. Even though there'd been 10 years prior of curiosity, it's kind of just, it was like, you know, the training wheels came off and off you go, kind of thing after that. Do you think the acceleration is continuing to accelerate? And are we going to see a lot of shifts in our lifetime, do you feel? I mean, I know it's just an opinion at the end of the day, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yes. But, you know, just as the acceleration of intensity occurs, so too does the acceleration of extended states of peace. And just as the acceleration of crisis for transformation is occurring, so too is the blossoming of new things. So I think it's important to keep in our awareness that when there's an acceleration in consciousness, it's every aspect of human life that accelerates, which means that it's not just the difficult things, it's also the ability for things to unfold very quickly. Because when we shift from 3D into 5D and beyond, it's that cause and effect timeline that begins. It's the linear time of cause and effect. I do this and this is what I get as a result. We move closer to that y-axis of present moment.
Yes.
Of the 0 point, and everything starts to happen very, very clearly. So if you looked at that on a graph, I'm going to try not to get my mic on my shirt.
Yeah.
You're on this horizontal x-axis, and the acceleration you're talking about is the past coming back into our present awareness. Everyone's evaluating what they did in the past and their karmic stuff and Akashic records. That's exponentially moving closer to that y-axis. And then you've got everything in the future. These are all the different things that could happen, and that's now coming into our awareness. That's coming closer to that y-axis. And that's the acceleration point. So it's a collapse of past and future so that everything starts to become visible and available in the present moment for us. And we're seeing that because there's a saturation just in what we can access just through media about history or what could happen in the future. All of the things we ever wanted to do, all of the things we ever thought about are starting to come into our awareness. It's a collapse in some ways, but it brings everything to where it's available.
Yeah, in the pure present moment where all our power lies.
Right.
And it's funny you say that, because I do ponder on sometimes, is it because I'm getting older, but my perception of time is changing? And I'm like, is that just through aging or is it what's going on?
No, that's what's going on. Is that linear experience is starting to collapse. The closer, because the more our consciousness expands, we're naturally existing in a space beyond that 3D, 4D containment. I mean, 3D is the cause and effect, and 4D is the looping around of timelines. So it's like our experience of reality has been stuck within a certain spectrum of frequency, and the more that we expand and the more that expands, so much more is possible without requiring the time lag or sense of process for things to happen, which means if you want to initiate a new business or you have an idea, it's far more likely to happen much closer to that present moment experience than having it to drag it out before you see results. Things will happen much more quickly.
Yeah. Fascinating. Rebecca, I'm going to have to come to an end on our podcast in a moment. I'm loving our conversation. I've really enjoyed today. I know I'll have the kids running around like lunatics in a second and barging through. But my last question to you is, and I asked this on the show, but like we've covered a lot. We've definitely covered a lot today. What would you like to leave the listeners to ponder on? Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners to ponder on?
Well, actually, I would like to invite listeners to be more spontaneous in their choices. Because when you choose spontaneously, you are giving yourself the opportunity to create something new. It's opening up a new pathway. When we don't choose spontaneously and we put a lot of thought and process into making a choice, we tend to make choices based on our memory or history, which means we're more likely to be doing things that are already on the collective memory map. So I would encourage people to choose spontaneously often. And it could be something as simple as picking up your coffee with the opposite hand that you normally do, or putting one shoe on before the other, the opposite of what you normally do. It vibrationally begins to open up new pathways of experience.
Beautiful. Where can people find more of you, Rebecca? Where's the best place to send them online?
Probably it's my website. It's my name, RebeccaDawson.com. There's lots of free content on there for you to explore. I have a YouTube channel and a membership community where we do a lot of seminars and groups where we discuss things, but I'm easy to find.
Yeah, no doubt. The links will be in the show notes for everyone. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation this morning.
Thank you, Guy.
Yeah, amazing.
Lovely. It was so nice to connect with you, and I hope you're enjoying that beautiful weather down there in Australia.
Right, the sun is shining. It's now 7:30 in the morning. I will do my duty with the kids, and then I'm hitting the beach.
Lucky you. All right, enjoy. Thanks again.
Thank you.